I've been pretty honest from the start. Usopp hasn't been my favorite character. But you know what? He's not bad either. No, really, hear me out. While Syrup Village has been pretty, well, alright, as we discussed in our last video, the arc has plenty of flaws. It's just I think Usopp really improves a lot as the story goes on. But hold up, my dear viewer, do you know how many days it has been since I started doing One Piece videos? Which means I have gone 14 days without Toei Animation striking this channel. So before that inevitably happens, head on over to my Patreon page, where if you become a patron just for $5, you can get access to 3 brand new One Piece videos. With that out of the way, let's get right into the video. Usopp, from the very beginning, he seems like a very interesting character because in his own arc, he's a character you're not supposed to take seriously. Obviously hearkening to Pinocchio with his long nose as we've discussed before. But what makes him interesting is that you can see a clear path to his redemption as a character. At least in terms of his mistakes. We spent the first half of Syrup Village building up that we shouldn't trust Usopp, that he's a joke, a liar, a thief of what makes a person decent. But that is necessary in understanding why Usopp is also a person who can change and does change, as we now pick up where we last left off in our review for Syrup Village. Kaya discovers Mary, who is still alive, and regrets not trusting Usopp. Turns out that Usopp was right and made the fool of everyone who said otherwise. Though now hearing that Klahadore is in reality the dastardly Captain Kuro, she tries to head out to talk to him to come to some sort of understanding. And honestly, we know how this is going to go. She isn't getting what she wants in the end. Though, as she heads to the battlefield, we turn our attention to Zoro, who is now fighting Bucci and Sham, Django's men. This is a pretty cool fight, honestly, because Zoro has to fight using only one sword, and we see a lot of unique offense from Bucci and Sham that shows their brutality in a fight, being able to work off one another. Zoro doesn't have that, as he is forced to pick and choose the moments he can retaliate, obviously with one sword. Though interestingly enough, I found it most interesting that Zoro would try and keep Usopp from helping him in this fight. Zoro, of course, though being the honorable man he is, stubbornly wants to finish them off, which makes sense for him. Funnily enough, this is when Captain Kuro arrives to observe what everyone has been up to. Unsurprisingly, he is not happy. So he gives them 5 minutes. If they aren't able to take out Luffy and his group of pirates, then he's going to kill not only the aforementioned, but also his own crew. Once again, this shows how ruthless Kuro is as a leader and why he must be stopped. He doesn't care who he has to use to complete his goals, he'll do it. And if you don't complete his goal, then he'll kill you himself. And that's just pretty brutal, honestly. Though don't count Zoro and the gang out, as Nami kicks Zoro's blades back, allowing him to fight back at full power. Always so cool seeing him pose with those swords, by the way. And he is able to take out Bucci and Sham, laying waste to them once and for all. Though, Bucci is actually able to survive the fight. So because of this, Django is able to hypnotize him so that he can unlock his fullest potential. This makes him even more powerful than he was before, and thus, obviously a bigger threat. Though on the flip side, Nami isn't done yet with helping. He goes to wake up Luffy when Django tries to hypnotize my wife. My wife, though, being the best ever, is able to still wake up Luffy before she's hypnotized. And, I'm sorry, but the visual of Luffy not only being kicked by Nami, but then waking up as if he's peacefully sleeping under the giant ship bow to getting drilled in the back of the head by Django's medallion is, well, that's some peak energy right there. And like the last time he stabbed himself in the face, he pulls the weapon out of his skull, mind you, and then screams that it hurts. Honestly, guys, this was such a great moment. I loved every second. I also like how Luffy checks up on Nami, who still has her mind on treasure, which actually I have a theory on that. For example, I think her being all about the treasure at this point is only a half-truth, though keep that in mind as we keep going along with this series. Then we switch over to Kuro, who is dealing with none other than Kaya. She's holding Kuro, of all people, at gunpoint, which is a pretty interesting sight if you think about it. This also is a pretty good moment where Kaya tries her best to remind him of all the times they spent and what they've meant. But to Kuro, It's nothing. He's been building up all this time to finally enact his plan, and while any normal man would probably change their ways, spending so much time with someone like Kaya, for Kuro, she was a means to an end. So when he gets rid of her, he will finally be able to inherit her estate and live comfortably on the island for the rest of his life. This leads to Kaya going into shock, unsurprisingly, as Usopp intervenes as his gang help take Kaya somewhere more safe. Shortly thereafter, Zoro is able to finally defeat Bucci in a battle that is incredible. At one point, Zoro, with pained anger in his face, tells Bucci that he lost to him before, so he better not get in his way again. And to be fair, Bucci is able to throw Zoro around a few times, but still, he is no match for Zoro's training and technique, and he is eventually defeated. Then, after that, Zoro and Usopp go to rescue Kaya, which leaves Luffy and Kuro to fight, and insert licking sound here. This was finger licking good. But before that, let's finish up with Django and Kaya. So this leads us all the way back to Django, who is now trying to hunt down Kaya so he can hypnotize her to write Kuro into her will and then kill her. The boys come out of nowhere with their pepper attack, pretty good attack honestly, and proceed to give him the buggy special by beating the ever-loving life out of Django's junk. How about that for alliteration? After the unconsensual vasectomy, Django is jumped from the shadow by a shoveled assailant and chucks the damn kid into a tree. I thought that was great. He then fends off the others, but Kaya takes Django's medallion and threatens to kill herself with it as long as they stop trying to hurt Usopp and the others on the island, even if that means she has to give her wealth to Captain Kuro. Though, Zoro and Usopp show up to save the day as Usopp takes out Django, saving Kaya and the boys from certain death. So I wanted to get all the other stuff out of the way before we started talking about Luffy and Kuro's fight, because I think this is some really good stuff. So I first want to say how much I loved and awe Kuro's crew was of how Luffy would dare challenge him. As if Kuro were this man nobody would challenge because he's that scary. I mean, that's just some really cool world building in a sense, as this is one of the many things in which legitimizes Kuro as a fierce foe. I also love the verbal battle between the two back and forth as Kuro chastises Luffy's reasoning for saying, as that is the very reason he's probably going to die. But Luffy simply tells him to not worry, as he's not gonna die. Obviously very simple stuff, but really, really good in action. Speaking of, Luffy then starts the fight by extending his arms to grab onto Kuro in a really ingenious way to close the gap immediately, to which Kuro twists his arms, which sends Luffy tumbling into the ground. Then, Luffy uses Gomu Gomu leg sweep, but Kuro simply jumps to avoid the attack altogether. But Luffy is smart, and so he also uses Gomu Gomu pistol in combination with the aforementioned, and even then, Kuro impressively dodges the two-pronged attack by standing and balancing himself on Luffy's arm. Even more impressive is when Kuro starts to run up his arm and punches Luffy, knocking him back in surprise. Then, a chant erupts from Kuro's crew, but it's Kuro who shuts them up and reveals his reasoning for doing all of this. He wants to kill the name Kuro so that he can live out the rest of his life peacefully undercover without having to worry about the Marines. And thus begins our Kuro backstory. Wanting to escape the life of being a pirate and always on the run, Kuro enacts a plan to essentially fake his own death. So, after some Marines attack, he and Django deal with them, and then they hypnotize a Marine who survived the battle and another man who they set up as Kuro. From there, as they say, it's history. He succeeded in the first part of his plan, and now it's time to finish the second part. Luffy, being the mega chat he is though, and I'm not kidding, picks up a boulder and hits Kuro over the head with it almost immediately after this story ends. In Luffy's opinion though, how can he be a pirate if he doesn't want his name to be known? And yeah, honestly, this is kind of the job that Kuro signed up for, so that's completely fair for Luffy to say. And in many ways, it's the antithesis to Luffy's character anyways. This ultimately leads to the climax of the battle where Kuro reveals to everyone that his plan all along was to kill not only Kaya, but his entire crew as well. Kuro, though, is then defeated by Luffy as he yells that his plan cannot fail. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it. This fight and what it meant was amazing. Kuro rejecting his ideals and a dream of being a pirate just because of the downsides which came with it was just the start of his downfall. And then, when he rejected the very crew that is his lifeblood of a pirate ship, was the moment you knew that he was going to lose. The story of this fight tells us that those who reject our identity and our friends who helped us to get to a position where we are doomed to fail in one way or another. Kuro wasn't cut out for the pirate's life, but Luffy is, as his dream is far greater than Kuro's, and he's willing to sacrifice everything for it. Kuro is not, and that's more than enough to show how wrong Kuro was. Not only that, but the man was despicable, trying to use Kaya as some sort of way to get the easy life when he should already have had it. He was everything he wanted before, right? Why are we still going for shortcuts? Though I do find it interesting how in the end, it was his pirate crew that carried him away. As for the aftermath of the big fight, Usopp decides after all to keep this a secret from them, as he fears it would worry the villagers. As well, we get some development from Kaya, and while surprising, is sort of welcome. She apologizes to Usopp and realizes the reason she has been sick this whole time was actually because of her parents' death. So, she's ready to start the path of letting all of that go. She also gives Luffy and his crew her parents' ship, the Going Merry. And let me say, this is some of One Piece's most notorious iconography, and it's great to finally see it. This also leads to Luffy inviting him into his own crew as he disbands his current one with the kids, and they set sail together with a new member and a ship to boot. Good for you guys, you're out there killing it. I like your hustle, your grind set, dog. So, now that we have 3 arcs finished of One Piece, we can start to rank them. And I think, compared to what we've seen so far, I'd say Syrup Village is above Romance Dawn, but probably below Orange Town. The reasons for this are simple, as I agree with a lot of the criticisms about this arc you've already read on the internet. I just think Usopp's introduction wasn't overall favorable to his character, even though by the end he really comes into his own. As well, I just think Kaya is a pretty annoying character who's written in such an oblivious way that I felt a lot of scenes with her were either forgettable or simply something I'd want to forget. Now, with that being said, it's not that she was atrocious, but I do think there is something to be said about this character in particular being a bit tad unnecessary, at least in the way that she was written. Though this arc has a lot of really great stuff, like Gaimon, who I really enjoyed and felt his story was both sad, but ultimately really inspiring and memorable. It's also where we got to learn a lot about the Grand Line and how scary and dangerous it can really be. That was some just really good stuff. Plus, as well as anything with Kuro and Django, as I was just really into. I think these two characters pulled their weight aplenty in this arc. Especially Kuro, who at this point is my favorite antagonist along with Buggy. I just think that besides some of the shortcomings in introducing Usopp and the faults with Kaya in this arc, it's still a pretty good arc generally speaking. Though it really does feel like at some point it was maybe a little too long in the tooth, even for my liking. And I'm super duper patient with everything. So yeah, those are my thoughts on Syrup Village. Go back and check out my previous One Piece videos if you haven't, and if you want to watch my 2 videos on Baratie and part 1 of my Arlong Park series, then become a patron to help support the show and get some early content. I'll see you guys next time on the adventures of One Piece.